Hey guys, and welcome back to another midweek mystery video. I feel like I look really dark and like I'm wearing so much black and my hair's dark and my makeup's dark today. Not intended for midweek mystery, but you know, works out quite well, very witchy looking. But this is going to be the story today of the mysterious disappearance of Brian Schaeffer. This is a very popular story in true crime circles, so I'm sure if you are big on true crime, you've probably heard of this one already. But I think it's so popular because it is one that Brian was in a situation that a lot of people are in. He was out in a club or in a bar with his mates drinking, and then he disappeared and he's never been seen or heard of again. So without further ado, let me tell you the story of Brian Schaeffer. So Brian Schaeffer was a second-year medical student at Ohio State University, and he disappeared on March 31st, 2006. So he's now been missing for over 11 years. He was 27 years old when he disappeared. He was about 6'2", between 160 to 170 pounds. He had brown hair, hazel eyes. He actually had a mark in one of his irises, like a little black mark, which makes him quite distinctive. And he also had a tattoo on his upper, was it right or left? Upper right bicep of the Pearl Jam symbol. I don't really know what Pearl Jam are, but I'll insert a picture here. I think it was an album art sort of thing. So on the afternoon of the 31st of March, he went out for dinner with his dad, and that was actually the last time that his dad ever saw him alive. Then later that night, he met his friend Clint Florence at a bar in Columbus, Ohio called the Ugly Tuna Saloon. So the beginning of the night went like any normal night out does. He met his friend Clint at the Ugly Tuna, and then they went bar hopping down High Street in Columbus. Like, visited a few different bars. He was drinking quite a lot. All the sources say that he did a few shots of hard liquor, which I think immediately gives the impression that he would be crazy drunk. Potentially, we don't know what his tolerance to alcohol was, but a few shots of hard liquor wouldn't necessarily make him like crazy drunk. Like, I go out with my brother a lot. He's like 5'10" and smaller than Brian would have been, and he can handle a few shots of liquor absolutely fine. Obviously I don't know how much Brian drank, but I think a lot of the sources make out that he was like crazy drunk, but all I can see is that he did like a few shots and that was it. So I don't know, I think that's something to bear in mind. So in one of the other bars they went to, they met up with a few more friends, and then they ended the night again at the Ugly Tuna Saloon. About an hour after he started drinking, at 9:56 p.m, he actually called his girlfriend. He was in a long-term relationship with Alexis Wagner. He called her and just had a little bit of a chat, told her he loved her, told her he was probably going to see her soon. Nothing in that conversation really struck up as anything suspicious, just standard boyfriend-girlfriend chat. But that was the last time she ever heard from him. So Brian and his friends arrived back at the Ugly Tuna Saloon about 1:15 a.m. Something which is very important in this case is that Columbus, Ohio has the highest amount of CCTV cameras anywhere in Ohio. It was a very busy, or is a very busy, like city or town, I'm not sure. There is a lot of CCTV everywhere, so pretty much all of Brian's movements that night are tracked. So the CCTV shows him entering the Ugly Tuna Saloon at 1:15 a.m. and it never ever shows him leaving again. So shortly after Brian entered the Ugly Tuna, he was actually seen again on the CCTV about 1:55 a.m. standing outside of the bar talking to a couple of girls. These girls have been tracked and interviewed and nothing suspicious happened there at all. It's just general chat. I think they were friends of his friend Clint. So it's just standard chat. He was seen chatting to them, and then he seems to say bye to them and heads back towards the bar. However, something interesting here is that the bar actually closed at 2 a.m. that night. And his friends were all seen leaving at 2:09 a.m. So Brian went missing between 1:55 a.m. and 2:09. That gives him 14 minutes to disappear for something to happen to him. That is such a small window of time. I think his friends realised pretty soon that they couldn't find him, and they were looking around everywhere for him and couldn't see him. And that's when they decided to leave at 2:09. I don't think they thought of it as anything really strange at the time when they couldn't find Brian. Apparently he was a bit of a wanderer anyway. He made a lot of friends on nights out, so they just assumed he'd made friends. Or potentially they assumed that he just walked home. He literally lived like half a mile from the bar. The last time Brian spoke to his friends, he actually told them that he was going to go speak to the band. Now I'm not sure if this was before 1:55 a.m. when he was seen speaking to the girls, or after that. I assume it was before, because I don't think they saw him when he came back. Something important to bear in mind with this case is that Brian's mother actually had died 3 weeks beforehand of cancer. which obviously is very sad. Brian was very upset about it, grieving. But his family said he wasn't inordinately depressed about it. He was just sort of grieving as any normal person would do. So obviously this is an avenue that the police explored when Brian first was reported missing. They thought maybe he had gone away for a few days to clear his head, to grieve his mother in peace and stuff. And that doesn't really make sense with the type of person that Brian was. He was dealing with his mother's death in his own way. He wasn't the sort to run away, and besides, none of his personal belongings had gone. He hadn't taken anything with him. The only things he had on him the night he disappeared were his phone, wallet, and that's it, I think. So that is literally all that disappeared with him, which says that he probably hasn't run away, and also the fact that he hasn't been heard of in 11 years also probably points to the fact that he hasn't run away either, because he wasn't that sort of person. Also, he was due to go on holiday 2 days after his disappearance. He was going down to Miami with his girlfriend Alexis. It's not 100% confirmed, but it's thought that he was going to propose to her on this trip. They were very happy together. They had no big relationship problems. He was literally going to propose to her. It also shows that he didn't run away, because he was planning to propose to his girlfriend. He wouldn't have left her like that. It was actually when he didn't turn up for his flight that his family got really worried and finally reported him missing. So it took his family 2 days to report him missing, but he was a 27-year-old guy, like, he was independent. So the police obviously took this case very seriously. He was a respectable person, he was a medical student, he had a lot going for him in life. Of course he was upset over his mum dying, but it wasn't the end of the world for him. He was still like functioning quite normally. The weirdest thing about this case is the fact that he is shown entering this bar and never leaving. So let me try and explain to you the way this bar was set out, because it's a little bit weird. So from what I've been able to figure out, there were 2 escalators sort of like going up like that. So there's one up escalator and one down, and there's a staircase up in the middle. And then nowadays, if you were to go there now, there's a movie theatre. So at the top of the escalator, there's a movie theatre if you go to the right, and the Ugly Tuna Saloon is to the left. However, the movie theatre wasn't there during that time, but it is now. So there are 2 cameras that pan this area. There's one camera that sort of like moves across. It pretty much covers the area 100% of the time. There's also another camera which is manually controlled. So every single person that comes in and out of this building, these cameras will see them. Now there's only 2 other ways to get out of this bar. One was to jump from the balcony. It was on the 2nd story, so you jump from the balcony onto the ground, or there's like an awning there, I think. So if you just do that, chances are you're very drunk and you'll probably get hurt, so you're probably not going to be going very far. The other way you could leave was through a construction elevator that was there at the time, or a construction lift. There was a construction site right next to the building at the time, which by the way has been completely fully searched. Nothing was ever found there, because I know that's obviously like a alarm bell sort of thing. But so there was a construction elevator. There is a lot of mystery as to whether this area was covered by a camera or not. A lot of people say there was a motion activated camera there, but I can't figure that out completely. However, the construction elevator wasn't necessarily one that customers would be able to access and get into. There's a lot of like mystery surrounding this, but it's quite widely thought that he couldn't really have got to this unless he was helping the band to unpack and were helping the band take out their equipment, which is what they most likely would have used. So the band here is a big mystery. The detective who was in charge of this case said that he personally watched that CCTV footage so many times. He could personally account for who entered that bar and who left that bar, and every single person was accounted for that night apart from Brian. Of course, there is a possibility that maybe he did run away, maybe he went back into the bar and got changed, put a hat on and left. But this again would be noticed on the CCTV. Like, the detective would have seen if somebody came out in a hat and clothes that hadn't been walking in, if you get what I mean. And besides, why would he feel the need to get changed? If he's going to go missing and run away, then he would just leave. So earlier on I mentioned the construction site. Again, this is a big area of mystery here. Of course, it was fully searched by the authorities and Brian was never found there. This would have been a pretty tricky area to manoeuvre whilst you're sober, let alone when you're drunk. If he had sort of fallen down something, he would have been found by a construction worker. A lot of people say there could have been a big like conspiracy and the construction workers could have covered it up, but why would they? It wasn't their fault. If he had entered this area whilst drunk and died, then it's not on the construction workers, is it? It's Brian's fault. But again, this was fully searched and nothing was ever found, so I think we can dismiss that one. Brian's girlfriend Alexis actually called Brian's cell phone every single night after he died. I think it was just a comfort thing for her. It always went straight to voicemail, apart from one night, I think about 5 weeks after Brian went missing. The cell phone actually rang 3 times, and of course Alexis was this was something she told the police, obviously, so the police investigated it. He was with the cell phone network Singular, which we don't have here in the UK, but I'm guessing it's an American thing, and they said that it was most likely a glitch in their system. It did ping at a cell phone tower like about 55 miles away, I think, but the most likely explanation here is there was just a glitch and somebody else's phone rang. I do know this happens, like it's happened to me before. I've gone to call my mum and somebody random's answered and I've been like, hi, who is this? Randy Schaeffer was Brian's dad, and he actually helped a lot with the search for Brian himself. Obviously he just wanted his son back. His wife had died 3 weeks beforehand, so he consulted a psychic. I don't know what it is, but a lot of these missing persons cases, the parents always turn to psychics, and the psychic told him that Brian was under a big amount of water, basically. So Randy himself found a load of volunteers and personally searched this is a weird river name, Olentangy River, which I'm guessing is a river that runs through Columbus, Ohio, and he personally searched it, and of course they never found anything. It's not only Brian's body that they're looking for here, they're also looking for cell phone, his wallet, any of his credit or debit cards. Ever since the day Brian's gone missing, his cell phone hasn't shown any activity apart from this weird glitch thing. His bank accounts have been untouched and his credit cards haven't been used. So it's not like he's run away and used the stuff. He's gone. Now this ugly tuna saloon was a really tiny little bar, and when I say it's really small, I don't think I first realised how tiny it was. Apparently it's just a single room. It was also like a seafood restaurant, so I'm not really sure how that worked, but I've read a lot of accounts from people who have said this bar is teeny tiny. A, it was packed, and B, it was so small and packed. If there was an altercation there, then somebody would have seen something, like if there was a fight or if Brian was to get murdered within those 4 walls, somebody would have seen. So the chances of Brian actually being murdered like in the middle of this bar is kind of insane because it was so tiny. Like there's no way it could have happened. And there's a lot of people that say they think Brian's buried in the walls or like hidden in the walls of the saloon, or they think that he's been like buried underneath the floorboards, something like that. Of course it's been searched a crazy amount of times and Brian's never been found. And also, this is a bit morbid, if Brian was sort of just stuffed between the walls of this little tiny club or little tiny bar, the smell, can you imagine the smell? Dead bodies, I've never smelled one myself, thank God, but they do not smell good. They wouldn't smell good. And in such a tiny space like the Ugly Tuna, if there was a dead body buried or hidden or stuffed between 2 walls, I think they would smell it. So a big theory that a lot of people talk about is the live band sort of theory. They think that Brian ended up going with the live band and something happened to him there. This is where he could have used a construction elevator and like he was helping the band unpack all their equipment and stuff and like put it all in the van. So I personally think this probably is what happened. I think he went to help the band or went to have a chat to the band, said he'd help them put everything away, and he went off with them maybe to an after party or something like that, didn't think to tell anyone, and something happened to him wherever the band went. From what I can see, the police never really looked into the band that much. I think they sort of briefly spoke to them, briefly interviewed them. They completely denied ever speaking to Brian. They didn't have a clue who he was, which is a little bit strange, but I think that is probably the most likely scenario because he was never seen leaving the building. How crazy is it that he was never seen leaving? Another theory which I think is really interesting is the smiley face killer theory, which is so interesting. I could do a whole video on this alone. Now this isn't necessarily a killer. They've never been able to identify a person. They can't even prove that it is a person. Basically their theory says that a lot of young male bodies are found in bodies of water across Midwestern states, and every time that a body is found, a smiley face graffiti is found nearby. Now this has been proven by a lot of people and it's also been disproven by a lot of people. Like nobody can prove that somebody is drowning young men in water and just leaving them there. This could possibly be what happened to Brian. However, his body's never been found and he is the only body that's never been found. Although saying that, the killer's not proven, so how do they know he's not the only body that's never been found? Now this video is nearly over, but there's just a couple of other things I would like to point out. After Brian's disappearance, everyone close to him and everyone who's with him that night actually took part in lie detector tests. However, his friend Clint Florence actually refused to take part in a lie detector, which personally I think makes him really dodgy straight away. However, none of the other friends said that Clint had anything to do with it. Clint could account for his actions that night. He was seen leaving at 2:09, so unless Clint had killed Brian in the bar, I don't know. A lot of people say it's dodgy. I think it is dodgy that he didn't do the lie detector, but personally I don't really think he could have had much to do with it because the timings just don't really work out. Also, a couple of years later, I think in 2008, Brian's dad, Randy Schaeffer, was actually killed in a freak accident. He was out during a windstorm and a branch came off a tree and hit him and killed him, which is so tragic. So now the only person left in the family is Brian's younger brother, who is still searching for Brian to this day. I cannot imagine going through such tragedy in such a short amount of time. But that's it. It's a really strange one because there's no body to talk of and there's no clues whatsoever apart from the fact that he was never seen leaving this building. But there's just a lot of theories that I could throw out there, and you can have a think about them and let me know which one you think is the most likely, or if you've got your own theories, and let me know. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Tell me if there are any other mysterious disappearances you want me to talk about, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!